How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What was the big sigh for?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like we're moving backwards in time, and I was really looking forward to moving forward in time, but I'm afraid we're doing the worst possible moonwalk imaginable.
Chris, these things are fluid. They're not going to go backwards forever. It happens. Other states are falling back. We've spiked a little bit. We have done good. We can do good again. This doesn't happen forever. Do your part, and that's all you can do, and we'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, but I'm afraid of the whole doing your part thing seems to be falling on deaf ears, and I think that's just, from my standpoint, the irony of, I think a lot of people who want sports back are the ones that are failing to do their own part, and they don't see the correlation. So, I don't know. No moonwalk for me. That's all I'm saying.
Just do your part. Keep wearing the mask. Keep walking slowly forward, and you will be fine. I promise.
All right.
Okay.
As long as I have the Riley guarantee.
Well, there's no guarantees. I'm kind of like a weatherman. There's no guarantees. Yeah. I'm doing my best guess because weathermen are just giving you their best guess based on models. And the models tell me we're going to get better. We're going to tamp this thing down. There's going to be a vaccine in a few months. Smart people are at work. Hey, maybe people aren't going to be in the stadium, and that's on them if they're not in the stadium. But I feel like we're going to have football, and that means you and I will have something to broadcast and write about in about 70 days.
I want you to kind of be the weatherman. I want you to wear the white coat.
I'm not gonna step on Kevin Eubanks' territory. Maybe I'll put on the red coat like Larry Kristoviak when it looks imminent that football season's going to begin. When we get that puff of smoke from Mark Harlan's office when it comes up, then I'll put the red jacket on and I say football is imminent, kind of like Kevin Eubank does with the snow.
Works for me.
Okay, good enough. So the sigh is out of the way. Here we go. If I offered you, if you were not working, if you just decided tomorrow, you're done with the sports world, you want to open up your own community garden and become a farmer in the greater Avenue Sugar House area, and you're just done with sports writing, you're just going to become a fan. If I offer you a pair of tickets for September the 3rd to watch Utah and BYU play, would you go to Rice-Eccles Stadium, knowing what you know right now?
It would depend on who would go with me, and it would depend on how many people are in the stadium. If they were social distanced, and people had masks on, probably. You can wear it.
I'm going to say that we're not going to have a full stadium. I don't think we're going to have a full stadium. So I'm going to say, based on what we know now, we're going to have a partial stadium, which means some sort of social distancing. And you're welcome to wear a mask. Nobody's preventing you from wearing a mask. So we don't know if that's going to be a requirement. I think it will be a requirement. I actually do. I think if there's going to be fans, and that may weed out some of the people that are putting their foot down and saying, I'm not going to, my personal freedom, I'm not going to wear a mask. Okay, then watch it on TV. You can't go to the stadium. But you and Aaron Falk, who will not have any jazz to write about that day, can grab a couple of IPAs, throw them in your backpacks, and you're heading up to Rice-Eccles on September the 3rd, knowing what we know now. Are you going to go?
I think I would if the masks were mandatory. I think that would be my caveat. And I would have to figure out where you find these absurd clear bags. I guess I would have to go on Amazon, but I've never seen them anywhere in my life. And I'm the one guy who walks up to the stadium with the backpack on, and I think people look at me like, who's this guy? And I eventually go through the media entrance and get my search and whatnot. But yeah, the clear bag thing would be a huge hindrance for me, and I would probably have to rely on Amazon, which I'm not a big fan of.
So what do you need the clear bag for? I'm just curious. You're going to down you can't take the IPAs in. You're going to down those in the parking lot. And I think you've got your phone in your wallet, so I don't think you need to put those in a clear bag. Those just go in your – I mean, I don't know.
Don't you need like a seat cushion or like do those fit in there? Maybe like maybe sunscreen for fall? Like,
yeah, but it's a night game.
Is it a night game?
Well,
It's
I'm
always
pretty
a night game.
Yeah, the September 3rd game, they're not going to play that Thursday afternoon. I'm pretty sure that'll be a night game.
Well, yeah, and I guess it also depends on, like, if we're saying, like, 7:30, if you're sitting on the east side, Falk's going to need some sunscreen because my dude's going to get roasted.
Yeah, he doesn't have that great skin you do, that less to burn. Caramel, not olive. I made the mistake of calling it olive a couple of weeks ago. That caramel skin. Yeah, he's pretty pasty. So yeah, he'll need. I'm going to get you guys west side seats so you don't have to worry about the sun. How's that?
Okay, sounds good.
So you don't need a clear bag. You're going to wear your mask. You and Falk will be separated from everybody else. You'll have a little distance in between you. If you've got a little distancing and a mask, is that good for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Most people, I've asked a question today. I asked it kind of in a roundabout way back on May 8th. And it was like 72% of people said on the poll I asked that day that they were likely to go, and 28% weren't likely. And now we're like 50 days further ahead, but we've come forward and then gone back a little bit. Most of the texts I read were pretty good. Right now, the numbers on the poll question are about 63-36. So, and that feels about right to me. I think there's enough people that are probably a little trepidate. There's a little trepidation. There's some people not either they may have health issues or somebody in their family might. But I kind of feel like, in general, more than 50% would, probably in that neighborhood of 65 to 70%. I think when it all settles today, we'll be at about a 70-30.
Yeah, I mean, just this conversation in and of itself makes me think of, if media is allowed in, what does my landscape look like? I'm probably wearing a mask up on the 6th floor and, at least 6 feet away from Derek Facer and Josh Newman and the lot. So I kind of have too many masks that are okay, but I think if that's going to be the case where I'm going to be sitting in an enclosed booth with somebody and a bunch of others for hours on end, I might need to get one of those cool professional ones with the filter on the front and that kind of thing.
I'm surprised
I can expense that.
I'm surprised the Athletic hasn't. Maybe they will for the fall when everybody starts covering stuff again. Maybe they'll send out those masks. I'm still waiting on the T-shirt. I was like the second person to sign up for the Athletic 2.5 years ago, and I don't think Mandel ever sent me my T-shirt. I don't want the T-shirt, but if they come up with a cool Athletic mask, I would wear that.
Yeah, I would too. I think I will bring that up at the next meeting because that would be that's a good idea. It's a super simple up in the corner. You've seen a lot of those. I think I was watching the Liverpool match yesterday, and Kenny Dalglish was in the stadium, and he had the really cool Liverpool logo on the side. So maybe that could be done in the future.
Not Paul Dalglish, the former RSL man.
Not Paul. His dad, the legendary Kenny, was on hand for that thrashing yesterday, which I will say was pretty depressing from a neutral standpoint. I mean, obviously, I want to see Liverpool win the league, but it was just like it was varsity versus middle school with Liverpool against Palace yesterday. They were humming on all cylinders, and that team is absurdly fun to watch when they're going.
Can we talk about maybe at least some hypothetical football? We can't call it real football because we're going to actually, but I don't want to talk about COVID anymore and will we or won't we? We're just going to go until somebody tells us otherwise. They're going to play games. What do you make of the game this year, the Utah-BYU game, the very first game of the year? Utah's trying to make it 10 in a row. It's very clear there's a talent gap in the programs. That much we know. But BYU's got a little bit more experience coming back in some places this year than Utah does. Utah's obviously got a lot of questions, not a lot of off-season to go. But what do you make of the game and as you kind of look ahead to it coming up on September the 3rd?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there was any year for BYU to snap the streak, I think this is it for a lot of reasons. To your point, they returned 15 starters, 8 on offense, 7 on defense, and this is Utah's youngest team that Kyle's ever had in his 26 years at the program. And obviously this is the one year to not have something like this happen, but they have been beset with the COVID-19 pandemic and missed spring, and summer is kind of in flux. And, I know you didn't want to talk about it, but this is going to play a role in how every team in the country prepares for this game. But yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I'm actually working on the BYU State of the Program piece right now that I was commissioned to write for The Athletic, and talked to Kalani last week about where he thinks the program is, and They have a lot of returning talented players. I mean, I don't know how many schools in the country can say that they have three in their mind capable starting quarterbacks. They have a lot of talented linebackers on defense. And it's just going to be a very interesting game because for so many years now, it's been so clear, at least from my perspective, that Utah had the talent advantage and the experience advantage based on where they play in the Pac-12. And now Utah is a little bit behind the eight ball, in my opinion, because they need to break in a new quarterback. They need to break in 9 new starters on defense. We don't know what the long-term lookout is like for Morgan Scalley. So there are so many things that will go into this game, not to mention the pandemic. So I think it's going to be one of the weirdest but most fascinating rivalry games in the history of this rivalry.
Yeah, I think we could say that about a lot of games this year. It's funny you mentioned that, but I was kind of going over different position groups, and I know Utah returns in essence 8 offensive starters this year themselves too, and you might even say 8.5 if you give the nod to Jake Bentley being the starting quarterback. He's got 33 career starts, Chris. So if he ends up winning the job, it's not as if you're starting somebody inexperienced in there. And the most experienced quarterback at BYU, Zach Wilson, he's got 16 career starts, and he's 8-8, and he's also coming off an injury. So, you look at the running back groups. BYU's best running back, at least on paper, is the guy that basically left Utah because he wasn't going to see the field very much. That's Devontae Henry Cole. Utah's wide receiving core is very deep, and they've got a healthy Britton Covey back. I would call the tight end position probably a push, and both teams return 4 or 5 offensive linemen. So I don't know that, there's a decided advantage for either team necessarily on offense. And then on defense, maybe a little bit of an advantage to BYU. But I think they return 6 starters, right, defensively, or is it 7?
I think it's 7,
okay,
if I'm not mistaken.
And I'll say Utah returns 3 starters with the news that Tupai's coming back.
Yeah.
I'll say Tupai and Tafua, and then, obviously at linebacker, Devin Lloyd. And you can also make a case, and I know they weren't starters, but the number of snaps that those defensive interior linemen play, those guys have a ton of experience. They weren't starters because they were playing behind Panasini and Fotu, but Pete Tonga and Moalo and those guys, they played a lot of snaps last year. So to me, it's really the one linebacker spot and the back end where Utah's got a lot of questions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at it's just, this is what Kalani has been trying to build at BYU now for 4 years, and that's depth. And he told me that, especially on defense, because we knew when Kalani was here, Utah's hallmark was being able to throw guys in there and have them be productive. And they have that a little bit on. I mean, they have a very good returning interior on the defensive line with Kairos Tonga back and a bunch of other guys that have started next to Kairos, but on the outside, they lose Devin Kafusi, who obviously transferred to Utah. Pretty green on the outside, but their linebacker core is pretty impressive. And they have some guys, Chaz Ayu, the Kaufusi cousins, trying to think who else. Some other guys, Keenan Peely.
Yep.
Peyton Wilger was big for them last year, thrown into the mix. It's just going to be an interesting game, Bill. It really is, because Utah has to break in a new quarterback, and they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback in a rivalry game, albeit a weird one where there probably won't be fans, or at least a very small number of fans, breaking in a new quarterback in a rivalry game. And, you're going to have to figure out what the offense looks like with a brand new quarterback. Not to mention, again, not potentially, 5 new starters on the back end for Utah. And it's an odd one because, like you said, the strengths come in interesting places where there's not really a decided advantage in where we would usually say, like, this is where one team is going to take advantage of the other team. And I think usually in the past it's been pretty easy to say this is where Utah will be better, and I think this game will be a little more difficult.
Yeah, the trenches are look like they could be relatively even. I will say I think Utah, even though they don't have big names, I think their skill position guys on offense, at least wide receiver and running back, are probably overall better than what BYU has. But the advantage that Kalani has this year versus the last couple of years, and it's the one that Utah has too, obviously, is staff intact. he didn't make a lot of wholesale changes. One, I think the running backs coach left, and they had to replace him. But Harvey Unga's in there, who knew the program, was a grad assistant. So, in an off season where there was a lot of uncertainty, if you keep your coaching, the teams that have coaching staffs intact, I think have a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one thing that kind of sucks from an outsider's perspective, I think if we're talking hypotheticals, how cool would this game have been in a normal year with a full stadium, with BYU coming in with obviously so much to gain, having lost 9 in a row, and Utah breaking in so many brand new players, especially at really, really important positions. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a weird season, man. I'll say this ad nauseum, and this game for sure will probably be as odd as any game that I'll cover or that you have announced, especially considering the stakes of the rivalry.
Yeah, we'll see, and keep our fingers crossed we can at least get some fans in that stadium. Before I let you go, Bartle and Ute Zone reported the other day that the investigation had concluded into Scally, that the results were being turned over. Have you heard anything new? Are you expecting something this week?
Potentially this week. I think Mark and his crew are not going to rush this for obvious reasons because of how important the subject matter is and the person at the head of the investigation. I assume that sooner or later we're going to hear, because if you look at the timeline of what Utah needs to get done, they need to get their staff intact and raring to go. We saw that the coaches are back in the facility, the players are returning. I think we still have the rest of the 2020 class will be showing up, I believe, next week to round everything out. But yeah, it should be sooner than later, because Utah needs to kick the tires on what 2020 will look like from a staff perspective.
When are you expecting to have the state of the program piece out for BYU?
We turn these things in really early because there's so much information to come through. So I think it'll be a few weeks. I think it'll be second or third week of July.
Okay, that'll be up at the Athletic, and Chris will hammer that out. He's got his stuff that he's going up multiple times a week. Who'd you write about today? You wrote about an incoming offensive lineman, right?
Yeah, Coley Fayu, the offensive tackle who will be a guard at Utah out of North Creek in Seattle. He's one of the commits. Interesting backstory, but talked to his coach, who actually coached at the University of Washington and in the NFL, and he said this kid will be ready to play day one as an interior lineman. So I'm sure Jim Harding was happy to hear that when he told him that news.
I'm telling you what, I think everybody's just assumed with 4 or 5 guys coming back that there were a lot of guys that played last year, Chris, because of injuries and shuffling along that line. I think that's going to be – I don't think anybody's guaranteed a certain spot on that line. I think we have an idea of a few guys that will probably have spots, but I'm not sure where. I think outside of maybe the center position with Orlando Umana, I'm not sure that any one position is locked in yet with that offensive line. I think there could be in the number of 8, 9, 10 guys competing for starting spots.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Orlando is a lock. For sure. And I think the other guy who is a lock no matter what, even though he's so versatile, is Nick Ford, just because of how good he can be all over the line. But yeah, I mean, you look at a guy like Keaton Bills, who came off his mission, and he was getting some run in spring, and Utah was really high on him coming out of high school. And he's just one name. There are plenty of other guys who are in the mix. I think if we look at the big picture, I think you will rely on the guys that have been there. But again, to your point, no job is ever locked up, and you want it that way. You want to be able to be pushed, and coaches want that, and players want that.
Yeah, and you're right about Nick Ford. I was just inferring, I don't think Nick Ford's position, meaning guard, tackle, is necessarily – I think there's so much versatility and so many guys in the mix. I'm with you. I think Nick's going to be a starter, but I'm not sure if he's going to be a right tackle or an interior player or a left tackle. I'm not sure where they're going to play him yet.
Yeah, I think his best spot is at guard. I think he does his best work there. But he was getting some run at the tackle spot in spring, and we saw him play there last year. So versatility is never a bad thing, and Jim Harding and Kyle would be the first to tell you that. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this thing plays out, because even though they returned 4 out of 5, there are some guys that have been waiting in the wings to see if they can push for some minutes.
So, any results against Checkets this week in FIFA?
No, I actually was. I was free last night, but Spence was busy. He was getting tacos, so maybe we'll find some time this weekend.
A likely excuse.
A likely excuse. Again, I think I don't know if I tweeted it at you. I think I'm plus 38 in goal differential at the moment.
I don't think he's ever denied goal differential. I think he feels like he's closing the gap when it comes to competitive games. Now, better question, where do you and Andy Larson stand? Because Larson's coming up in about 20 minutes with me. I'm going to guess this is kind of a bigger, better rivalry.
So the first time we played extensively was a few months ago, like right around Christmas time. And I think I got the better of him that day. But since we've played, I think we've drawn every single time. And they've been pretty electric matches. Also did a 2-on-2 tournament recently with Andy and Falk and some other friends, and Andy was the better player on the day. So he's definitely the one that's giving me my run for the money for sure.
All right, I'll have to grill and drill down on Larson when we get him on here in a few minutes. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.